This guy was supposed to be the next Michael Jordan. This guy was also supposed to be the next Michael Jordan. This guy was close to being the next Michael Jordan, and there is heavy debates about whether this guy is better than Michael Jordan. Have you ever asked yourself, what makes Jordan so damn good? What's good everyone, I hope everyone is having a good day. It's Stephen A. Smith of YouTube, and I believe I know the answer to how Michael Jordan's legacy is what it is today. I've broken down his legacy into 3 different parts. These parts might explain why there has never been another Mike, and why there might never be another one. There is the obvious factor, which is his game, the stat lines he put up. As crazy as it sounds, we're actually going to ignore that, because his legacy runs so much more deeper than his on-court presence. First of all, the most important thing that creates a superstar is what sort of cultural impact they have, how they've expanded their game outside of basketball. And this is where we start. Try this simple experiment, just to see Jordan's impact happening today. Go to someone who may know little about basketball or have absolutely no knowledge about basketball, and just ask him this one simple question: who is Michael Jordan? And 99% of the time, they will tell you he's a basketball player. Okay, well, yes, so what? Everyone knows who he is, which is exactly the point, because his impact was so large that it has basically become common knowledge. If you still don't believe me, ask that same person, who's James Harden? Who is Kyrie Irving? And chances are that they won't know, despite them being superstars in this league right now. And the reason why that is because they don't have the same impact. Michael Jordan isn't the only one to have accomplished this feat though, because there have been other players who have had an impact this huge. Take for example Kobe Bryant or LeBron James. Everyone also knows those two, but how did he actually have this huge impact? Well, for starters, he was doing things no one has ever seen before. His crazy athleticism was amazing to watch, and because of his pure talent, he helped spread basketball around the world. For the first time, people were seeing basketball as a sport outside of America. He is one of the biggest reasons why basketball has been so huge in China. There was more to it than his talent. Everyone has seen the clips of him just toying around with his opponents. He refined this new type of basketball, a type that showed basketball was more about fundamentals and was more about having fun. He was flashy, and you can't mention his cultural impact without mentioning his Air Jordans. Now, I know they might just be sneakers, they might just be shoes, and people wear them. And yeah, that's correct, but they actually do have a huge impact in Michael Jordan's legacy. Michael had managed to change how people looked at players. Suddenly, they were more than athletes, they were icons. By merging themselves within the fashion industry, particularly the shoe industry, they became well known, expanding outside of basketball. And you can see this today. When you think basketball shoes, you instantly think Jordans. They've become a symbol for streetwear and paved the way for future changes, such as the one that Allen Iverson had made during his time in the NBA. And he also began the merge between basketball and street culture. Well, okay, so if Kobe and LeBron had managed to do this, why aren't they better? Well, culture isn't everything. The next part is their story. One thing that really makes a person is their story. We've all heard the classic rags to riches stories. Think of Giannis. He was very poor living in Greece, and he got very lucky when someone had seen some insane talent. That guy must have been the world's best scout, because that skinny Greek kid is now the league's MVP and has a very bright future within the NBA. Jordan has something similar. Especially with the Last Dance documentary being out, people know his story more than ever. In the documentary, Jordan is heavily presented as this insanely competitive guy who will never back down from a challenge. This competitiveness was a defining characteristic of Jordan, and it is also a huge part of what makes him the GOAT. This competitiveness allowed him to cut down every superstar that had crossed him. Anyone who dared to talk trash to him would face destruction on the court. This also made him the most feared player in the league. Everyone knows that Jordan was cut from the high school team, and now he's regarded as the best player to have ever lived. That's all well and good, but that doesn't exactly scream legend. What about the story of a man who entered the league, created the most dominant dynasty in the NBA, turned all of his teammates into some of the best players to have ever lived? But that's not all he did. He also managed to win 6 rings. This was incredibly iconic. In fact, it was so iconic that every time a player gets their 6th ring, it's known as the Jordan ring. But that's not all. Michael Jordan's story was special because it was perfect. He stayed on one team. He was completely loyal, something you would struggle to find in the NBA today. And you guessed it, that's not all. On his final ring, he finally retired, and this final ring was known as the last dance. You just can't get a more perfect ending than that. That's why most people tend to look over his Washington days, because that wasn't the ending that people expected. And again, LeBron also has a story. Kobe has one of the most prolific stories. After having his problems off court with the law and with his family, he created this persona on the court which everyone knows as the Black Mamba, to deal with the problems on the court. So obviously this story can't be everything. Well, not exactly. There's one more thing which contributes to the insane legacy of Michael Jordan, the good old test of time. This isn't mentioned much, but after Michael Jordan retired, there ended up being a sort of new era of basketball, the post-Jordan era. And looking back onto these days when he played is, well, nostalgic. And people don't want to ruin that. Well, let's put it another way. Imagine a TV show from your childhood. It's fun and nostalgic to think about. And it's hard to admit that there is anything wrong with it, or that there was a show better than it. That's the sort of same logic here. People don't want to admit that there is someone that is better than Jordan, because the legacy he had built up and the fact that he had so solidly placed himself onto the world's best player position, is really hard to admit that maybe he wasn't. Maybe we were all wrong. But here's where things get a little bit interesting. If you know Wilt Chamberlain, then you know he is something of a myth and a legend within the NBA. But he is hardly mentioned in the GOAT debate. I mean, come on, the guy holds the most amount of points in the NBA with 100. Today we just go crazy if they score 60. It was rumoured that he once dunked so hard he actually broke someone's damn foot. But that's what time does. Players fade away into the background. But here's why that won't happen to Jordan. What does Kobe and LeBron have in common? They both just copy Jordan. And that's not to discredit their game or anything, they're both amazing players, but it's just a fact. They didn't exactly copy Jordan, but they got most of their play style through him. And that's what most players in the NBA do. These legends carry Jordan's legacy throughout their game, whereas you don't really hear players who copied Wilt Chamberlain. Jordan has become such a staple within the NBA from his cultural impact to such an extent that there will just never be another player like him ever again.
trophy.